All right, join me right now is Bantamweight prospect Khai Wu. Khai, usually when I'm speaking with you, man, you are in Taiwan, but now you're
Yep.
back at home in California. You've been there for a while. How's life treating you?
Yeah. It's good, man. I didn't know when we were gonna have another chat. I was starting to look really dim, but we're back. I'm back training, feel good, and excited to be chatting with you again. It's like a pre-fight ritual now to chat with you before all my fights.
Of course, man. Of course, man. I would never miss out on that, man. And yeah, like I said, the last time we spoke, you were in Taiwan. You were doing your thing. You're growing so much as a fighter, and just so much as I don't want to like say it's like pretentious, but as a brand out there. And then I
Sure.
remember you on you were doing it. You did TED Talk. You know what I mean? Like who does that? Like fighters rarely. Let's start with that, the TED Talk, because we never talked about that. How did that all end
No.
up happening?
So they're throwing that was wild. That was wild. I couldn't. I still can't fathom it sometimes. I'm like, dude, do I really do a TED Talk? But it started because some of the people that reached out to me also so happened to see my fight. They were there at my fights, previous fights in the past, and just a lot of them were chattering, and they're like, "Hey, let's maybe we could get like an athlete on this TED Talk." There's certain requirements and criteria that I think they need to fill. I'm not going to assume that I know what it is, but I mean I get the ballpark, like the gist of it. You have like a scientist, you have like a philanthropist, a billionaire or millionaire, whatever. So they have to fill the requirements. I believe TEDx is different from a TED Talk. TEDx is like more of like a local show, whereas a TED Talk is like a bigger, international stage, from what I can tell. And this TEDx just so happened to reach out to me, and they asked me if I was interested in talking about just anything. And I would have to propose the subject to them and see how they liked it. They didn't get back to me for a while, so I was like, it was cool while it lasted. Next thing you know, they're like, "Hey, how's your speech coming along? Like, you ready to present it?" I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what? I didn't know I was on." So then they sent me all these cool stuff. Like the photo that they chose was a little weird. I didn't like the photo that I just looked really mean in that photo, but it was really cool to go there, mingle with all the other TED talkers, and that was crazy because I still brag about this because when I was in high school, I'll name drop this teacher because I don't like her, and I rarely ever talk about people I don't like. But in high school, Miss Barrett, she was a history teacher. She specifically was playing a TED talk about like it had something to do with like a historical, like maybe Pangea, something like that, and the TED talk was about that. And in class, I remember whispering to one of my classmates, and I was like, "Hey, I wonder what it's like to do a TED Talk. Like what kind of like backgrounds? Yeah, I was just curious. Like, who are we listening to, and who is this guy?" And she said, "Oh, you'll never have to worry about that because you'll never get a chance to do a TED Talk." And I will defend her by saying I wasn't a good student, like in class. Not that I was a bad student, but I just didn't get good grades. So I understood that. Sometimes I still think about like copying the TED Talk link that I did and just emailing it to her, just be like, "Hey, like thanks for the motivation." But we as martial artists, we stay humble, we grow from that, and it's just like a fun little story. And it sounds cliche, but I'm just like, man, if people really don't think they could do something, just take that as an inspiration or like an example. You never know. Like of all people that should give a TED talk, why an MMA fighter and one that never graduated college? I went to college for like a year and a half and didn't go anymore. So of all athletes, of all people that should be given a TED talk, it was me in Taiwan, and just mind-boggling. So it was awesome.
Yeah, you're the second fighter that I know in Asia that did the TED Talk. The other one was Ramona Pascal. She's based out of Hong Kong. Now she's actually in the States in Las Vegas, working her way up and trying to get signed by the UFC and everything. So, yeah, man,
That's
it's good to
awesome.
see. It's great to see, man. Asians out there doing their thing, getting on TED Talks. It's all
Yes,
good,
sir.
man. And the last time you performed or you were in competition was at the beginning of 2020, long time ago. When did you actually
Yeah.
head back to the States?
I think like a few weeks after that, I think two
Mm-hmm.
weeks after the fight, I headed back because I was getting ready to fight here, and then also getting ready to fight back in like around summertime. So I wanted to come back here and hone a lot of the skills because, truth be told, when I was in Taiwan, I was training with a bunch of amateurs. Like no, no, like they were literally amateur fighters. They weren't pro fighters. So it was hard. I was running practice. Like I remember in the beginning, I was like on my phone just. Before practice started, I was on my phone just sitting there. Everyone just sat and was staring at me, and I was like, what do you like? This is fight practice. We're starting, right? And then they're like, oh yeah, we're waiting for you to run it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like the warm ups, the training. I was like, dude, I'm running everything. So there was a little bit of pressure going into that fight and a few injuries that occurred before that fight where I was like, dude, in that fight, I should have done way more, but I just had to play it safe. And as the fight progressed, it got more and more exciting. I was trying to conserve my gas tank because there's just a few things that went wrong in fight camp. I was just really scared. I had a poker face on, but it worked out the way it did, and I'm just happy for it. But it just goes to show that the mental skill is definitely a lot more important than physical at times. At times to emphasize that. But yeah, so this time, I left mid-January. So I came back and I was going to get ready to train and everything, but then, COVID happened, shut everything down, and, a lot of stuff fell through, and just one thing after the next. It felt like an avalanche of like bad vibes, it happened to the world, but, it to each their own.
You created a lot of momentum out there in Taiwan, and this COVID, pandemic has derailed that. Do you feel it derailed it somewhat, or do you still keep in contact with a lot of people over in Taiwan? Because I'm pretty sure they want you to come back ASAP, right?
Yeah, it was. I think the popularity, like strike while the iron is hot, that's no longer an option because COVID and Taiwan shut down. But before that, I was like throughout the year, even as pandemic happened here, Taiwan was still hot. They threw on amateur MMA shows. They had like this KOD event. It was crazy, modified MMA rules, striking rules. It was crazy. So it's still popping off. And it doesn't matter how big the sport is. My name is attached to it now. I'm like very honored to be able to be at that point where it's just my name is just naturally attached. So any new prospect that comes up, they're like, oh yeah, can this guy fight, Khai or this and that? But I kind of made it known that I don't really want to fight any Taiwanese guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. And the reason why is because like I feel like I work so hard, not even Taiwanese, but just Asian in general. When I was there fighting for WOTD, they were giving me like lists of names and stuff. I was like, give me some foreigners, man. Like I don't want to be fighting Asian guys. Like that's the group of people I'm trying to bring up. But unfortunately, there's only so many people out there that they can fly in and due to budget and show and opportunities of who was available at the time. So unfortunately, it went that way. But yeah, I think more people know me now than back then. So I've been waiting for that opportunity to go back and not only just show my face, but teach training, like seminars. Because last time I was there, I taught like 6 seminars. Every single seminar was packed, like new faces, new people. And I'm just like, man, this is incredible. MMA's doing so good. And it's not just me, by the way. There's a lot of other contributing factors and people that paved the way, like Jeff the Machine Huang, Rocky Lee. All those guys paved the way for MMA in Taiwan. And not to mention some of the Bear Den. They're another gym out there that they got a lot of good high level coaches, Taiwan BJJ, all these gyms that are there that have like, Mike, he's a Taiwanese jiu-jitsu black belt now. So it's really cool to see all this like MMA scene come together and at least show some support for one another. So it's really cool to see. It's growing, and I can't wait to head back, man. Not just for the fights itself, but for the boba and the food,
Yeah, of course,
I
man.
crave that.
The food is tremendous. And now you go back to the States, you're in Cali, the pandemic hits. I know you're limited, you're at home. I think you were playing video games most of the time, training while you could, so it wasn't the best training situation. When did you actually get back into like full-blown training where you could spar, contact, more than 5 people in a room?
I would have to say that probably happened around July or August of last year, where we were actually flying under the radar a little bit. We were training like that, but it didn't fully open up until closer to the end of the year. And I trained, and a few of our gyms closed down. Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu had to close down due to the tenant being, whatever. I don't want to speak too much on that, but yeah, that happened. And then Omni, we had to move too because of tenant. It just never made sense to me that like a pandemic just happened and you're beyond rich as a tenant. And you're like, you know what? Because my income has gone down, I'm going to increase your rent ×2 so that way I can make my money back. But it's like, we're not making any money. So it's like, why do you want us to pay you double the amount? That still makes no sense. So it's just, it's mind boggling to me how selfish some of these people could get. And unfortunately, a lot of these gyms closed down, but blessing in disguise, because it led us to forming other new alliances and teams and gyms. And last year I went to LA, to Black House, to train a few times. And if none of my gyms had closed down, I probably wouldn't have went out there, So I was able to train out there under the legendary Coach Kenny Johnson, Coach Rage out there, train with some of the other guys that I know out there, Brady Huang and stuff. So former Contender Series guy. And it was just really cool just being out there. And Dr. Jason Park, he's Ortega's guy right now. And I met up with him, and he was just chatting it up like he wasn't who he was. And I'm just like, man, these people are so nice, so cool. So it was an honor to be able to train there and kind of test my skills and see where I'm at. And I was like, man, I got so much wrestling skills I need to work on. And coming back here, working at another Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu, we have a bunch of affiliate gyms. Patriot, Alejandro Perez from Turlock. And it's just, we have like a very good gym now, we have a lot of good systems, and I was able to fully train with the Resistance. BC as well, UFC, MMA legend in my opinion. He's freaking gangster, man. Training with him is pushing us at the Resistance, and all these other wicked guys like Eddie Abasolo. They did a split off from their gym, and they opened up one up of their own, and then our gym closed down, so it just kind of all came together. It's a nice melting pot right now. And the name kind of couldn't be much better than that, Resistance. That's exactly what we were doing. We were trying to resist the whole COVID shutdown. Not like we're trying to still train, stay healthy. We weren't like doing anything bad, but it's just, I got to get paid, I got to train, and I had a bunch of opportunities last year, but just because gym after gym was closing, and then that, like, we were like, oh, things are back open, oh, back closed, back open. It's just California was just a shit show last year, so it was really hard to get something going. But once Resistance opened up and a lot of the other gyms opened up late, like last year, starting around August, September, October, that time we started training full on, sparring, and it was really cool after that.
It's been a long time, man, and July 24th is the date, but man, have you had a hard time just getting booked to find an opponent, or what was the delay?
Honestly, the delay was not necessarily opponents, because I had like 20 guys, like names dropped with me last year. The problem was some of the COVID like restrictions, like if you're coming from Cali, because Cali was the hotbed, you needed you can only, like, if you fly in, you need a quarantine for like 5 days. So, and then they weren't going to cover my hotel. So you're telling me if I take a fight, I need to fly out there 5 days before and be locked in a hotel room with me and my coach, and we would just have to train on the carpet. Like the thing, and I could only have one corner man. The things that they wanted us to do to fight was just a little outrageous. And if I had like no fights, I just turned pro, maybe I would have done it just to say I need some experience. But I'm not at that point anymore in my career. I need to take fights that actually, like, it's going to improve my game overall, just not an opportunity. So we didn't get that desperate. Also with my management, getting signed to Dodge Sports and stuff. I remember last time I was talking to you, I didn't have a management yet, and now I do. So they're able to help me find a lot of fights and do all that stuff. And that definitely paid off. But at the same time, just a lot of things didn't happen. Bad luck too. I got in a car accident last year, and then like a bunch of other stuff was happening that just prevented me from committing. Oh, also another thing was they were accepting short notice fights. Like all fights, like a full camp's like about a month and a half to 2, right? Last year during COVID, a full camp was 3 weeks, and you have to cut the weight too. And I was like, dude, I can't cut weight and risk the chance of getting sick. Even if it wasn't sick, let's just say I got a regular cold while cutting weight, because it's just so short notice and too fast. And I don't put on a performance that I think was good, and then I get injured and I have to go, hospital. It's just too many like factors, risk versus reward. I'd rather just train at the gym, improve all of my skills that I need to work on, and then go back into a fight fully prepared and not have any excuses. The last thing I want to do is lose a fight and make like a billion excuses on why I lost, So it was stuff like that really kept us from fighting and committing to a full fight, because it's too short notice. And if you want me to cut to 35s, I haven't done that in my last 2 fights. I hadn't fought. My last 3 fights, one was at a 45 title fight. The other 2 was at a catchweight 140. So I haven't fought at 135 in a while, and you expect me to cut it to in 3.5 weeks, max. It was just very hard to do. So that's why, unfortunately, I couldn't do it, and it hindered me, and that's why I haven't been able to fight until finally this year. This organization, Colorado Combat League, came at us with an offer. Guy accepted right away, and I don't even know how this thing really came about now, because it was so fast. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna have audience. We're gonna have you guys do a COVID testing kits, You could bring another coach, another cornerman, and we have gyms out here in Colorado that are open. So it worked. Everything, all the pieces I needed fell into place, and yeah, it gave me a lot of time to prepare.
Of course, man, and it's a main event, which is always good. It gives you that platform, and you're taking on Alejandro Rodriguez, a guy that is known for his submissions. What else can you tell me about him?
Honestly, I don't know. I think you're only as good as your last fight is a good like motto to base your skills training for an opponent, right? And I saw his last few fights, and he looked good. I took a look at it maybe like twice. One on my iPad and one on my phone, so a bigger screen. And then I just kind of broke it down a little bit. I'm like, he trains with the Factory X Muay Thai, I believe. And they got some good guys, Royval and a few other guys. I can't remember off the top of my head these names, but they got some good guys, and I'm assuming he trains with them. But at the same time, I know these big teams. They have like big practices, big guys, like a lot of big name fighters there. So a lot of them get catered to. But if you're like an up and comer, you have to, you're almost like a punching bag, or like they no disrespect to any team out there, but like you just got to work your way up until you get to the big leagues. Like you need to earn your keep. So with this guy, I don't know what his role is on the team, but from what I see, he's very durable. He's good. His last two opponents were tough, and he got him out of there in the first round. I don't care what level fight you have. Going into a fight with the nerves that you do and submitting someone in the first round, no easy task. And he had 2 back-to-back subs, I believe. So very, very tough guy. But, man, this is the first time, I think, as a pro, I'm fighting a guy that's shorter than me and, like, kind of smaller than me. So I think that takes a lot of advantages that it gives me a lot of advantages. Usually I don't have an advantage in any of my fights. I don't have the height advantage, reach advantage, speed advantage, strength advantage. This fight's almost like, oh, wow, this is the first time I think I have almost all the advantages on paper. And I think I've been training so much that I've been training with my jiu-jitsu coach, getting, picking his brain, training, that I'm like, man, this fight could go anywhere and I could showcase it. And again, during my pandemic times, I got to watch a lot of my fights, and I'm like, man, why was I so trash in these fights? Like, I should be putting some of the guys I fought away. So then I really took a look at my jiu-jitsu training and all that stuff that should like all my weaknesses. I took a look at all that, and I'm like, why don't I showcase my jiu-jitsu more in my fights? Why don't I showcase my wrestling more in my fights? And it wasn't until then I was like, this fight, if it goes I'm confident. One of the first few fights where I can honestly say, I'm like, there's real no game plan. Go in there, probably going to shoot in on me because I look like a striker, or in my last few fights I've been a striker. Try to take me down, or, he's a submission guy, so take me down, work his way into a good position, sub me, or put me against the cage, get me tired out. Thing is, I'm in pretty good shape. He's in higher elevation. I'm going to Colorado next week for to 12 days to finish up the rest of my camp there. So I was able to fortunately do that thanks to Dodge Sports too. We got a guy out there, Joey. He's helped me out a lot. He helped me find this matchup too. He's in Colorado. I'm gonna link up with him. Pueblo, the area of where we're fighting, is a lower elevation than Denver. So I'm training at a higher elevation, going down to a lower elevation. So I feel very, very good. I've been punching harder than I ever have. I'm walking around lighter than I ever have for all my fights. So all signs are pointing to a very smooth and like, we have a guy now at the gym that works on people, Greg. He's been doing acupuncture with me, cupping. After like a year and a half of being in COVID, quarantined, I finally, like, after practice, I'm now very lucky. I feel like I'm spoiled, but I get worked on now after practice. So usually like the nagging injuries and stuff, after practice, I just go, hey man, I got an injury here, I got an injury there. I'm a little nervous right now heading into the fight because I'm like, did I train hard enough because I have no bumps and bruises? Or is it because I train very smart, I have a good coach, I have a good recovery guy now that I threw into the mix? So honestly, I don't know. It's like I'm getting nervous because I'm not as nervous, and also I'm not having the same bumps and bruises. So I'm like, am I really battle ready? And my training has gone smoother than ever. So honestly, it's like, it's either like a Goku Ultra Instinct moment for me where I get into this fight, and I just look amazing, or I go in there and completely shit the bed and just go like, you didn't do what you needed to do, and I got to change things up again because it was a year and a half. But my last fight, I was main event. This fight, main event, it's not too bad. I'm really honored that I could be back-to-back main events, and also I've already been there. I've main evented like 2 shows now in my as a pro, or 3. So this one feels like I'm picking up where I left off. To answer your question earlier, you know, the lost momentum. But now you're telling me more sponsors than ever, management team, everything. It's like now we got the ball rolling. That year that I took off from COVID, blessing in disguise. Got to really change my perspective and take a look at training and get exposed to new things. So I think this guy's good, but I think maybe he would have beaten me last year before COVID. But because COVID came around and I made these adjustments, I'm willing to really, like, I'm curious myself too, man. I just want to go in there and put on a show and fight. And I'm really excited to perform on this, like, put on a show and put on the performance that I think I'm going to put on. Because if that's the case, man, it's going to be like an artist in there, you know, painting on a canvas.
And what's the plans for the rest of the year for you? Of course, you're focused on this fight, but then you must be thinking like, okay, if I win this fight, then that's, you know, a bunch of fights in a row. And then what's the next step?
So I think after this fight, I want at least 2 or 3 more fights that are Fight Pass, UFC Fight Pass fights. And then 2 or 3. LFA, you know, CFFC, whatever, any of those organizations. And then maybe go to a contender, see if I can get a contender series or even a contender series for Asia. I think I'll be good then. I want to test myself against some decent guys. But at the same time, I might also want to take less time now, or more time off now, and less fights, because my next few fights I want it to be more quality over quantity. The reason why I had so many fights was because I had a lack of amateur experience. So now we got in touch with one of my teammates, Nick Cruz, fought for Sparta, the fight organization. They have boxing fights. They have Muay Thai with MMA gloves, like ONE FC style. So there's a chance I might jump into boxing and test my skills there and just get more combat experience, you know, in the next year and a half. I just turned 26. And I already have, this is going to be my 9th fight. So I'm like, dude, I'm only 26, my 9th pro fight, 4th year into my pro career. Give me a little bit more experience before I test the big leagues, you know? So I really might want to do a bunch of jiu-jitsu tournaments, build my resume up a little bit more with these boxing fights, Muay Thai fights, jiu-jitsu tournaments, and then pick up an MMA fight, you know, maybe every 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, maybe fight 2 MMA fights a year next year. And before the year ends, I want to get 1 more MMA fight, and in between, just take a bunch of these crazy Muay Thai with MMA glove type fights, and just to build experience and get that exposure out there a little bit more. So at the end of the day, before I get into the UFC, I got like this resume. It's like, oh, I boxed, I competed in jiu-jitsu, you know, I want to get my brown belt too. I'm trying to really work on that. So there, you know, I do want to stay active. But first things first is after this fight, I want to take a little mini vacation. When I say a mini vacation, I'm talking about a week. Man, this fight, I've had so much new business opportunities open up that I know when to slow down and not burn myself out. Last thing I want to do is finish this fight, get so excited, take a bunch of other stuff, and then get burnt out before the year ends. I can't make up for the year and a half that I had off with COVID as much as I want to. I got to be realistic with myself. I'm not Superman, you know, can't do everything. So take my time, get into some more businesses, build my brand some more, like you said, get on my YouTube a little bit more, share some more stuff with Taiwan, and maybe even go back there when the borders open up over there a little bit more, ease up the restrictions, spend some time with the fans out there. I can't believe I can even say I have fans now. You know, it's crazy. I remember the first time you and I chatted, it was before my second fight in Taiwan, and there was still no one that recognized me. Really, I go to fight events, they're just like, oh, cool, it's nice to see you again. Now it's like I'll go back, and then even like some of the workers at the event would be like, after the fight, they get photos with me, and then there's restaurants that have videos of me playing at the restaurants. There's people that's, you know, that like they tell my mom, they're like, hey, my mom got a place in Taiwan, a new place. She moved. My mom was like, hey, my son is going to be visiting me more, so I need a gym here. And then the guy goes, oh, why do you need a gym? She goes, oh, so you could, you know, my mom's, she doesn't really care about me fighting. She goes, he likes to put like mats on the ground, roll around, and he needs a bag and all that stuff. He goes, oh, what does he do? And my mom said, my son is a MMA, like, you know, he trains MMA. And he goes, oh, you should tell your son that MMA is really popping in Taiwan. He should go train with this kid named Khai. And then my mom's like, oh, that's funny you say that. That's my son. And he goes, no way. He didn't believe her. she FaceTimed me on the spot in Taiwan, and I picked up. It's like my dinner time here, and I pick up. I'm like, well, Mom, you FaceTime me at a very awkward time. The guy loses his shit. He's like, wait, no way, I'm selling a property to the, like the chat. And then it's like my mom goes to the local coffee shop there. The worker, she's like, hey, I heard you, like it. Do you mind if when your son comes back to Taiwan, I could get a photo with him? She goes, oh, just FaceTime him right now. And she shows her, and she's like hiding behind the curtains because she got so embarrassed. And I was like, is this even real? Before I left Taiwan, I got stopped at like the airport for a photo before, because they're like, I think I've seen you fight before. Like, is that really you? Is it, I'm like, this is so awkward. I got people secretly taking photos of me, sending it to me in my DMs, and they're like, hey, is this you? And I'm like, who took that photo? Like, I can't be bumming it out there anymore. So definitely want to go back and spend some time over there, grow the sport a little bit more. And even here, the whole Asian American hate going on and crimes, that have been happening for a long time, but now it fits the narrative of the media a little bit more. They want to cover it, but hey, I'll play that role with them. I'll play this game where I show a little bit more support. I want to make a little donation after my fight to some AAPI foundations, or maybe like some mom or pop shops that got hit by some crime recently. There's just a lot of like problems like that going around, and I would be lying to you if I told you I didn't want to walk around in Oakland and just see someone punk some old Asian guy, some old Asian grandma, grandpa, and I'm there. I'm just like, hey, I fought in tournaments before. I could have a few fights before my actual fight, but I want to keep it as civil as possible. And it's not about, as cliche as it sounds, it's not about fighting hate with hate. If a lot of times, if you knew how desperate these criminals were, I'm not trying to say give them a pass, but at the same time, if you knew how desperate they were and they had to do that, I think what needs to be done is we need to have a better correctional facility, like teaching these guys how to be better human beings. And the only way I could do that is by leading as an example. And I don't want this for clout. I just want to make a donation, to under the table, or it doesn't matter. I'm still debating on whether or not I should do it behind the scenes or make it public. But the problem with the public thing is, like, you inspire more people to do it, but at the same time you get hate for it because people are like, oh, you're just doing this for clout, So I don't know. We'll see. But there is a few cases that I've been taking a look at. I'm like, man, that's so sad. These Korean like mom and pop shop, it's like they don't do anything, and these people just come in there and break their doors and then like steal their money. Stole like $9,700 from them. And I'm like, that's like their life savings. They had to potentially close down because of that, So it's just rough. It's awful, So I do want to do something about that. Maybe contribute to getting them some security cameras or something. But like, give back to the community, because when I needed the community, they were there, in terms of when I was in Taiwan and stuff. And I want to bridge the cultures, not create a separation. I don't want to go back to Taiwan and go like, yeah, screw, Americans or whatever. It's like, no, I was born in America. I'm different. I want to go back and share the knowledge I got here and bridge the cultures. That's the whole point of, sharing cultures, bridging them together, not cultural appropriation, but it's bridging cultures, like sharing stuff. A lot of my friends take them to Taiwan, enjoy some fights, and teach them how to drink boba without choking on it, So that's the goal, to eventually do that, before the year ends, hopefully. And the next year, take those tough fights. Split some time between my resistance gym and LA, Black House, very open there. They're very cool. Get some good training there. And then, hopefully before next year, the end of next year, you could see me on a Contender Series and get that UFC contract. Or, ONE FC could stop playing around and, throw me a contract my way. And, I could fight over there in Asia and help them build some of the more, the Asia market, And I'm also born in America, so they want to throw some shows here and, do a TNT show again. Hey, I'm here. I got some fans here a little bit. So I'd like to, see which options are available. And before my career ends, I do want to get a victory in Bellator, man. I want to right those wrongs, dude. The first fight, legitimate loss. Second fight, still can't get over it. The loss, like I'm when I say I can't get over it, I just meant like it's there on my record. I want to be able to go into Bellator and just get that victory and just go like, hey, this is who I am. Not those fights, not the bad call in the judges' scorecard, not the hometown favorite, biased scorecard, and not the mistake I made in that first fight. I want to show the maturity. I showed growth. I want to get back in there and maybe get like just a one fight too, in the Bay Area, get the Asians out there celebrating, and hopefully that happens before my career ends.
thank you so much, man, for the time. And yeah, good luck on the rest of the year, and good luck on July 24th.
Thanks, John. Always appreciate talking to you, man.